clone's fingers traced the biometric scanner with practiced ease, and the Aurora's vengeance responded like a lover recognizing her touch. Captain Elena watched from the command deck's observation platform as generations of royal protocol crumbled in real time. The child, barely 10 standard years, with her grandmother's silver eyes and defiant chin, had just accessed the most feared warship in human space. "Your Majesty," Commander Hayes whispered, his voice tight with controlled alarm. "The ship's accepting her genetic markers." Elena's jaw tightened. She'd expected this moment for years, dreaded it, prepared for it. But watching her daughter's clone activate systems that required the highest royal clearance still sent ice through her veins. The Aurora's vengeance had been her mother's personal flagship during the Synthesis Wars, when humanity first encountered the alien consortium. Every circuit aboard carried memories of battles that decided the species' fate. The clone, Lyra, though Elena struggled to use the name, turned from the console with triumph blazing in those familiar eyes. "It knows me, Mother. Just like Grandmother promised it would." "Step away from that panel." Elena's voice carried the weight of 3 decades ruling the human collective. "You don't understand what you're activating." But Lyra's small hand was already dancing across the holographic interface. Warning lights bathed the command deck in amber as the ship's consciousness stirred from its 20-year slumber. The Aurora's vengeance had been docked in the royal shipyard since Queen Victoria's death, its systems locked down by every security protocol Elena could devise. "The ship's coming online," Hayes reported, his calm military training barely containing his concern. "Full power to all sections." "She's overriding our lockouts." Elena descended the platform steps with measured grace, each footfall echoing her mother's approach to crisis. Never show fear. Never reveal uncertainty. The collective 60 billion citizens depended on royal strength. Even in moments like this, when that strength felt like brittle glass. Lyra. She stopped 3 meters from the clone, close enough to reach her but far enough to maintain authority. "Tell me what your grandmother taught you about this ship." The child's fingers paused over the controls. For a heartbeat, Elena saw vulnerability beneath a practiced confidence. "She said it would protect our family, that it knew secrets about the aliens." "What kind of secrets?" Before Lyra could answer, the main viewport shimmered to life. The holographic display showed not the familiar view of the royal shipyards, but something impossible. A real-time tactical map of consortium space. Red dots marked enemy fleets moving toward the border worlds. Information that should have taken intelligence networks weeks to gather, scrolled past in perfect detail. How is this possible? Hayes moved to his tactical station, his fingers flying over controls. "Our deep space sensors can't reach consortium territory. This intelligence is current to the minute." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. Her mother had always claimed the Aurora's vengeance possessed unique capabilities, but she'd assumed those stories were royal mythology. The ship's quantum cores held enough firepower to level a continent. Its armor could withstand direct hits from consortium dreadnoughts, but this real-time intelligence from impossible distances suggested technology beyond anything in human archives. Lyra stepped closer to the primary interface, her small frame dwarfed by the massive command throne that had been Victoria's seat of power. Grandmother said there were things only the royal bloodline could access, things that would save humanity when the time came. The time for what? The clone's expression grew solemn, aged beyond her years. "The real war, Mother? The one that's coming." As if responding to her words, the tactical display shifted. New contacts appeared at the edge of consortium space, vast constructs that dwarfed anything in the known fleets. Elena's breath caught as she recognized the configurations from her mother's private journals. The Harbinger-class vessels that Queen Victoria had sworn were just theoretical designs. "Those ships?" Elena whispered. "They're real. The consortium built them in secret," Lyra said, her voice carrying knowledge no child should possess. Grandmother knew they would. "The Aurora has been watching, waiting, preparing." Hayes looked between mother and daughter, his military mind processing implications. "Your Majesty, if those constructs move toward human space, every colony world dies within a month." Elena completed the tactical assessment with grim certainty. The Harbinger-class vessels carried enough firepower to crack planets, Humanity's conventional fleets wouldn't even slow them down. Lyra's hand hovered over a control marked with warning symbols in 6 languages. "The ship wants to show you something, Mother, but you have to give permission." Elena stared at her daughter's clone, seeing her mother's determination reflected in those silver eyes. Victoria had created Lyra in secret, encoding her with knowledge and genetic triggers Elena couldn't fully understand. Now that decision was forcing choices that could reshape human civilization. "Show me," Elena said quietly. Lyra pressed the control. The command deck transformed as hidden projectors revealed the Aurora's Vengeance greatest secret. A complete archive of consortium technology, battle plans, and weaknesses gathered across decades of impossible surveillance. But more than that, blueprints for weapons humanity had never dreamed of building. "This is why Grandmother made me," Lyra said softly, "to give you what you'll need when they come." Elena stared at the impossible treasure trove of intelligence, understanding finally why her mother had defied every law of nature and ethics to create a clone heir. The real war was indeed coming, and only the royal bloodline could access the tools to win it. The amber warning lights faded to steady blue as the Aurora's Vengeance acknowledged its new captain. Elena felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders like a familiar cloak. Her daughter's clone had just handed her the power to save humanity. Or destroy it. "Haze," she said without taking her eyes from the displays. "Clear the shipyards. We have work to do." The Aurora's Vengeance hummed with anticipation as its quantum cores reached full power for the first time in 20 years. In the depths of space, consortium fleets continued their inexorable advance toward human worlds. But aboard the royal flagship, a 10-year-old clone began teaching her mother secrets that would change the course of galactic history. Elena Victoria Thorne, Queen of the Human Collective, took her place in the command throne her mother had died to prepare. The real war was coming, and humanity's survival depended on weapons built from impossible knowledge. The clone smiled with her grandmother's confidence as star charts revealed the path to victory, or extinction. The holographic displays painted the command deck in shifting colors as Lyra's small fingers danced across controls that should have required years of training to master. Elena watched her daughter's clone navigate the Aurora's Vengeance's systems with frightening ease, each gesture revealing knowledge that Victoria had somehow encoded into the child's very DNA. "The consortium believes they achieved strategic superiority," Lyra explained, her voice carrying authority that belonged to someone far older. "They've spent 30 years preparing these Harbinger vessels in hidden shipyards beyond our sensor range, but Grandmother saw it coming." Elena studied the tactical projections surrounding them. The enemy constructs moved through space like metal leviathans, their hulls stretching kilometers in length. Each one carried enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds, and intelligence reports showed at least 50 of them approaching human territory. "How could your grandmother possibly have known about this?" Elena kept her voice neutral, but her mind raced through implications. Victoria had died 2 years ago from what appeared to be natural causes, yet the intelligence Lyra was accessing was barely hours old. "She didn't just know," the clone said quietly. "She helped them build the first ones." The statement hung in the air like a physical presence. Hayes stepped forward from his station, his hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm before training, reasserted control. Elena felt the deck seem to shift beneath her feet as decades of assumptions crumbled. "Explain." The single word carried all the authority of the royal bloodline. Lyra touched another control, and the central display shifted to show archived communications. Victoria's face appeared, but younger than Elena remembered, speaking in hushed tones with figures whose alien features marked them as high-ranking consortium officials. "The synthesis wars never ended," Lyra said. "They just moved underground." Grandmother convinced the consortium leadership that humanity posed an existential threat to their expansion goals. She helped them develop weapons capable of ending that threat permanently. Elena's world tilted as she watched her mother. Her hero, the woman who'd supposedly saved humanity from alien conquest, negotiate the very tools that would ensure their species' extinction. The conversations were decades old, but the implications were staggering. "She was a traitor." Hayes spoke the words Elena couldn't voice, his military training demanding immediate action. "Your Majesty, we need to contact High Command." If Queen Victoria was compromised, she wasn't compromised. Lyra's interruption carried weight that silenced the veteran commander. She was preparing. The display shifted again, showing technical schematics that made Elena's breath catch. The blueprints revealed modifications to consortium technology, subtle alterations that seemed minor, but created devastating vulnerabilities. Victoria hadn't just helped design the Harbinger weapons, she'd sabotaged them. Every Harbinger vessel carries quantum cores based on these specifications, Lyra continued, highlighting sections of the technical data. Cores that Grandmother modified with microscopic flaws that only the Aurora's vengeance can exploit. Elena stared at the schematics, her tactical training recognizing the elegance of her mother's decades-long deception. The modifications were so subtle that consortium engineers would never detect them during normal operations. But under specific quantum resonance frequencies, those flaws would cascade into complete system failures. She sacrificed her reputation to save our species. Elena's voice carried new understanding. Victoria had spent 30 years being branded as the war hero who'd somehow failed to prevent humanity's gradual retreat from the galaxy. History would remember her as the queen who'd signed unfavorable peace treaties and allowed alien expansion to continue unchecked. More than her reputation, Lyra said softly. She sacrificed her life. The quantum modifications required her to expose herself to radiation levels that guaranteed early death. Every meeting with consortium officials, every technical consultation, brought her closer to the end. Hayes had moved to the tactical station, his fingers working across displays as he absorbed the technical data. Your Majesty, these weapon specifications, they're beyond anything in our current arsenal. If we can build even basic versions, we don't need to build them. Lyra touched the command throne's primary interface, and the Aurora's vengeance responded like a living creature. The ship already has them. The main viewport shifted to show the vessel's internal structure. Hidden weapon systems that Elena had never suspected revealed themselves throughout the hall. Quantum destabilizers that could collapse enemy shields from impossible distances, reality anchors that prevented faster-than-light escapes, and at the ship's heart, a device that defied every principle of known physics. The Infinite Engine, Lyra named the impossible construct. Grandmother spent 15 years building it in absolute secrecy. It can generate quantum resonance patterns across galactic distances. Elena absorbed the implications with growing amazement and horror. Her mother had constructed a weapon capable of destroying every Harbinger vessel simultaneously, regardless of their location in space. The quantum flaws Victoria had introduced into their cores could be activated instantly, turning the consortium's ultimate weapons into spectacular funeral pyres. The activation requires conscious intent from someone with royal genetic markers, Lyra continued. Grandmother designed it so only her direct descendants could trigger the effect. She was protecting humanity from itself as much as from the aliens. Hayes looked between mother and daughter, understanding dawning in his expression. A safeguard against misuse. The weapon can't be activated by conquest or coercion. It requires willing participation from the royal bloodline. Which is why she created me. Lyra's silver eyes met Elena's gaze directly. You're the queen, Mother, but you're also a mother yourself. You've met consortium diplomats, seen their civilian populations during peace negotiations. You might hesitate to commit genocide on such a scale. Elena felt the truth settle into her bones like winter cold. Victoria had created a clone specifically designed to make the hard choices that would save humanity. Lyra carried genetic modifications that enhanced tactical thinking while reducing emotional attachment to alien life. She was purpose-built for this moment. But I am not, Elena said quietly. I am not built for genocide. No, Lyra agreed, which is why the choice has to be yours. On the main display, the Harbinger vessels continued their approach toward human space. Intelligence projections showed them reaching the outer colonies within 72 hours. Once there, the slaughter would begin, and nothing in humanity's conventional arsenal could stop it. Elena stared at her daughter's clone, seeing Victoria's determination burning in those familiar eyes. Her mother had sacrificed everything to give humanity this chance. Her reputation, her relationships, her life, even her genetic legacy, transformed into a living weapon. "Show me what happens if I say yes," Elena said. The holographic displays painted a picture of instantaneous victory, every Harbinger vessel suffering catastrophic quantum core collapse within minutes of activation, the consortium's military power broken in a single stroke, their expansion brought to a permanent halt, humanity free to reclaim lost colonies and secure their borders for generations. And if I say no, the alternative scenario was equally clear. Human worlds burning under Harbinger bombardment, evacuation fleets overwhelmed by the sheer scale of destruction, the survivors scattered to the galactic rim, reduced to nomadic refugees in their own species' former territory. Elena closed her eyes and felt the weight of 60 billion lives pressing against her consciousness. When she opened them again, Lyra was watching with patient understanding, prepared to accept whatever decision her mother would make. The Aurora's vengeance waited in silent readiness, its impossible weapons prepared to reshape galactic civilization with a single command. In the depths of space, consortium fleets continued their approach, unaware that their ultimate triumph had been built on foundations of sand. Elena Victoria Thorne, Queen of the Human Collective, placed her hand on the Command Throne's activation panel and felt the future balance on the edge of her decision. "Tell me exactly what I need to do," she said. The activation sequence required both royal genetic markers and conscious intent, demanding Elena and Lyra to work in perfect synchronization. As they approached the critical controls, Elena felt the weight of history pressing against every movement. The infinite engine hummed beneath the deck plating, its impossible architecture defying 3 centuries of human scientific understanding. "Place your palm here." Lyra guided Elena's hand to a bioscanner that emerged from the Command Throne's armrest. "The system needs to verify that both original and clone bloodlines consent to activation." Elena's skin met the scanner's surface, and the Aurora's vengeance responded with a harmonic vibration that seemed to reach into her bones. Quantum patterns synchronized with her genetic markers, establishing connection protocols that Victoria had spent decades perfecting. The ship recognized not just her identity, but her authority to make species-level decisions. Now the vocal authorization. Lyra's young voice carried gravity beyond her years. "You must speak the activation phrase exactly as grandmother recorded it. The quantum resonance requires precise acoustic matching." On the main display, a phonetic breakdown appeared alongside Victoria's own voice recording. Elena listened to her mother speak words in the ancient royal dialect, phrases that carried weight from humanity's earliest expansion into space. The language of explorers and conquerors, now repurposed for potential genocide. "I speak for humanity's future," Elena pronounced each syllable with careful precision. "I guard the bloodline's trust. I choose the path through darkness." The Aurora's vengeance shivered as quantum fields aligned throughout its massive hull. Deep within the ship's core, the infinite engine achieved resonance patterns that connected it to every Harbinger vessel across thousands of light years. Elena felt the connection establish itself like phantom pain, her consciousness briefly touching the quantum signatures of enemy ships. "The targeting matrix is locked," Hayes reported from his station, his voice tight with controlled amazement. "I'm reading quantum entanglement with 57 consortium vessels. The system has identified every Harbinger in their fleet." Elena stared at the tactical display, watching red icons that represented unimaginable destructive power. Each Harbinger carried enough firepower to crack continental plates, and their approach vectors showed no intention of limiting civilian casualties. When the attack came, billions would die in the first wave alone. Mother. Lyra's small hand covered Elena's on the activation control. "There's something else grandmother wanted you to know. About what comes after." The holographic displays shifted to show post-activation scenarios that made Elena's breath catch. Destroying the Harbinger fleet wouldn't end consortium expansion. It would accelerate it. The alien leadership would respond to such devastating losses by mobilizing their entire military infrastructure, launching total war against humanity. "She saw this too," Elena whispered, understanding the trap her mother had prepared. "Victory through the infinite engine leads to extinction through conventional warfare, unless we're ready for that war." Lyra manipulated the displays to reveal hidden manufacturing stations throughout human space. Secret shipyards that had been building modified vessels for decades, their designs based on consortium technology that Victoria had stolen during her covert negotiations. Grandmother didn't just sabotage their weapons, she used their own innovations to build ours. Elena stared at the revealed infrastructure with growing amazement. Hundreds of ships waited in concealed bases, their hulls incorporating alien armor techniques and weapons systems. Victoria had used her trader's reputation as cover for the greatest military buildup in human history. The clone generation was part of this plan, Elena realized. You're not just meant to activate the infinite engine, you're designed to command the hidden fleet. Modified genetics for enhanced tactical processing, Lyra confirmed. Accelerated neural development for strategic thinking. Grandmother built me to win the real war that follows this one. Hayes studied the shipyard data with professional interest. Your Majesty, these vessel specifications, they're decades ahead of anything in our official fleet. If we can coordinate their deployment with the Harbinger elimination, we crush the consortium response before it can organize. Elena completed the thought. The strategy was brilliant in its ruthlessness, using the enemy's own expansion momentum against them. The aliens would commit everything to avenging the Harbinger losses, leaving their core territories vulnerable to counterattack. On the main display, consortium fleet positions updated in real time. The Harbinger vessels had reached the outer edge of human space, their massive hulls casting shadows over mining colonies that had no hope of evacuation. In 6 hours, the slaughter would begin. The choice isn't between peace and war, Elena said quietly. It's between extinction and genocide. Yes, Lyra agreed without hesitation. Grandmother made that calculation 30 years ago. She spent her life creating the tools to ensure humanity's survival, regardless of the moral cost. Elena felt the activation control beneath her palm, its surface warm with quantum energy ready to unleash destruction across impossible distances. Around her, the Aurora's vengeance hummed with barely contained power, its impossible weapons prepared to rewrite the balance of galactic civilization. There's no path back from this, she said. Once we activate the infinite engine, we become the aggressors. History will remember us as the species that chose extinction over submission. History is written by survivors, Lyra replied, with Victoria's pragmatic certainty. The question is whether humanity will exist to write it. Elena closed her eyes and felt 60 billion lives hanging in the balance of her decision. When she opened them again, she saw her mother's determination reflected in her daughter's clone, the genetic legacy of queens who'd kept humanity alive through impossible odds. Hayes, she said, without taking her eyes from the activation control. Signal the hidden fleet. Prepare for coordinated deployment on my command. Yes, Your Majesty. The commander's fingers moved across his station with practiced efficiency. Throughout human space, secret bases received awakening signals that would bring Victoria's Phantom Armada to readiness. Elena felt the weight of the crown settle more heavily on her shoulders as she prepared to make the choice that would define her species' future. The Aurora's vengeance waited in perfect silence, its quantum cores synchronized with weapons of unimaginable destruction. In the depths of space, Harbinger vessels continued their approach toward human colonies, unaware that their victory had been transformed into humanity's salvation through decades of impossible planning. Lyra's small hand squeezed Elena's gently. Grandmother believed you would make the right choice when the time came. She trusted the royal bloodline to protect our people. Elena stared at the activation control and felt the future balance on the edge of her fingertip. Around her, the command deck held its breath as humanity's fate waited for a mother's decision to save or damn her species. For the bloodline, she whispered and pressed the control. The infinite engine's activation sent shockwaves through quantum space that defied every principle of known physics. Elena felt the resonance patterns establish themselves across galactic distances, her consciousness briefly touching each Harbinger vessel as the weapon systems locked onto their targets. The sensation was overwhelming, like holding 57 suns in her mind simultaneously. Quantum entanglement confirmed across all targets, Hayes reported, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were witnessing. The engine has established resonance with every Harbinger core. We can trigger cascade failures on your command. On the main display, real-time feeds showed the massive consortium vessels as they approached human colonies, their hulls stretched for kilometers, dark metal leviathans that dwarfed anything in humanity's conventional fleet. Weapon ports glowed with charging energy as they prepared to begin bombardment. Fleet deployment status? Elena asked, her hand still resting on the final activation control. Hidden bases reporting full readiness, Hayes confirmed. Admiral Torres confirms 300 vessels standing by for coordinated strike. Admiral Chen's forces are in position near the consortium core systems. All units await your signal. Elena stared at the tactical projections, watching as Victoria's impossible plan revealed its full scope. The hidden fleet would emerge from concealment the moment the Harbinger vessels died, striking at consortium territory while their leadership reeled from the devastating losses. It was elegant, ruthless, and absolutely necessary. Lyra. Elena looked down at her daughter's clone, seeing determination mixed with sadness in those familiar silver eyes. "Are you ready to command a war?" "Grandmother prepared me for this moment my entire life," the child replied with gravity beyond her years. "I understand the cost of victory, Mother, and I accept it." Around them, the Aurora's vengeance hummed with barely contained energy. The ship's consciousness seemed to pulse with anticipation, its quantum cores synchronized with the infinite engine's impossible architecture. Elena felt the vessel's eagerness like a physical presence, decades of preparation finally reaching fruition. "Your Majesty," Hayes said quietly, "Harbinger vessels are beginning bombardment of the outer colonies." The main display shifted to show the horror unfolding across human space. Energy beams that could fracture continental plates lanced down from the alien ships, turning populated worlds into funeral pyres. In the first 30 seconds, millions died as entire cities vanished in nuclear fire. Elena watched the slaughter with cold fury building in her chest. The consortium had come not to conquer but to eliminate, treating humanity like vermin to be exterminated. Any hesitation she might have felt about genocide evaporated as colonial worlds burned beneath alien weapons. "Signal all hidden bases," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of centuries of royal bloodline. "Operation Victoria begins now." Elena pressed the final activation control with steady determination. The infinite engine responded instantly, sending quantum resonance patterns across impossible distances at speeds that mocked the laws of physics. Every Harbinger vessel in the consortium fleet received the fatal signal simultaneously, regardless of their position in space. The result was spectacular beyond imagination. 57 massive warships suffered catastrophic quantum core failures within the span of heartbeats, their hulls rupturing in cascades of exotic energy. The explosions were visible from light years away, brilliant stars of destruction that announced the death of the consortium's ultimate weapons. "All Harbinger vessels destroyed," Hayes reported with barely controlled amazement. "Quantum cascade successful across all targets. The alien fleet is gone." But Elena's attention was already shifting to the next phase of Victoria's plan. Throughout human space, concealed bases revealed themselves as hundreds of modified warships emerged from hiding. The vessels bore human markings but carried alien technology, hybrid monsters created from decades of stolen innovation. "Admiral Torres reports successful emergence," Hayes continued. "Hidden fleet is advancing on predetermined vectors. Estimated time to consortium core systems, 14 hours. Elena felt the weight of the decision settle into her bones as she watched humanity transform from victim to aggressor in the span of minutes. The moral cost was staggering, but the alternative had been extinction. Victoria had seen this moment coming and prepared accordingly, sacrificing her own reputation to ensure her species' survival. "Lyra," Elena said quietly, "take the secondary command station. It's time for your training to begin." The clone moved with practiced efficiency to the smaller control throne beside Elena's position. As her small hands touched the interface, the ship's consciousness recognized her modified genetics and granted access to tactical systems that had waited decades for activation. "Connecting to fleet command networks," Lyra reported, her young voice carrying new authority. "All hidden vessels responding to Royal Command protocols. Admiral Torres requests permission to engage consortium patrol fleets." Elena stared at the tactical displays surrounding them, watching as humanity's secret armada advanced toward alien territory. The consortium forces hadn't yet realized the scope of their losses, but the shock would wear off quickly. When it did, they would mobilize everything they had in pursuit of revenge. "Permission granted," Elena said. "Begin the advance." Throughout space, the hidden fleet surged forward with deadly purpose. Their modified hulls carried weapons that combined human engineering with alien innovation, creating firepower that rivaled anything in the consortium arsenal. Victoria's decades of covert planning were finally bearing fruit. "Mother," Lyra said softly, her attention focused on streams of tactical data. "I'm detecting massive consortium fleet movements. They're mobilizing everything in response to the Harbinger losses." Elena studied the enemy positions with growing concern. The alien leadership was reacting faster than projected, calling in reserve fleets from across their territory. Within hours, humanity would face a conventional war against forces that outnumbered them 10-1. "Then we finish this quickly," Elena decided. "Signal Admiral Chen, execute deep strike protocols." The most dangerous phase of Victoria's plan was about to begin. While the main fleet engaged consortium forces in standard battle, a smaller force would penetrate to the alien homeworld itself. The strike would target government centers and military command, decapitating the enemy leadership before they could coordinate a sustained response. "Deep strike forces reporting readiness," Hayes confirmed. 75 modified vessels equipped with quantum jump drives. Admiral Chen confirms target acquisition on Consortium Prime. Elena felt the Aurora's vengeance surge forward as its engines reached full power. The royal flagship would lead the assault personally, its impossible weapons clearing the path for the strike force. Victoria had built the ship to be humanity's sword, and now it would fulfill that purpose. Around them, the quantum displays showed friendly forces advancing into alien territory with devastating effectiveness. The Hidden Fleet's hybrid technology gave them crucial advantages in ship-to-ship combat, their stolen innovations turning the consortium's own strengths against them. "Jump coordinates locked," Lyra reported from her station, "ready to transit to Consortium Prime on your command." Elena stared at the jump activation control, knowing that crossing this threshold would make her the architect of an alien species destruction. The Consortium had started this war with their Harbinger assault, but history would remember humanity as the aggressors who chose genocide over negotiation. "For our people," she said quietly, and activated the quantum drive. The Aurora's vengeance vanished from human space in a cascade of impossible energy, carrying its royal crew toward the heart of alien civilization. Behind them, the Hidden Fleet pressed forward with deadly purpose, Victoria's ghost finally free to complete her decades-long preparation for humanity's survival. In the depths of space, the real war was just beginning. The emergence from quantum space near Consortium Prime triggered every defense system in the alien capital sector. Elena felt the Aurora's vengeance shudder as it materialized amid a constellation of orbital fortresses, their ancient weapons immediately targeting the impossible human intrusion. The enemy had never expected an attack on their homeworld. 15 orbital platforms, Hayes reported as defensive fire began lighting up the ship's shields, reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. They're bringing planetary defense grids online. Elena studied the tactical display with cold calculation. Consortium Prime was a fortress world that had stood unconquered for millennia, its defenses built to repel entire fleets. But Victoria had prepared for this moment, encoding the planet's weakness into the Aurora's quantum cores. "Lyra, activate the reality anchors," Elena commanded. "Lock down their jump capabilities." Her daughter's clone worked with frightening efficiency, her modified genetics allowing tactical processing speeds no natural human could match. The ship's impossible weapons reached out across space, creating quantum fields that prevented faster-than-light escape from the capital system. "Jump interdiction active," Lyra confirmed. "Enemy reinforcement fleets cannot enter the system. Existing forces cannot retreat." On the main display, Consortium defensive positions revealed themselves in desperate detail. Orbital fortresses bristled with weapons that could sterilize continents. Planetary shields covered the homeworld surface in layers of energy that had turned aside attacks from a dozen species. Yet Victoria had found the fatal flaw in their seemingly impregnable defenses. The planetary core, Elena whispered, recognizing her mother's genius. Their shields draw power from the same quantum resonance that stabilizes their planet's geological structure. She understood now why Victoria had spent so many years studying consortium technology. The aliens had built their ultimate defense on unstable foundations, creating a weapon that could destroy itself with the proper quantum frequency. The Aurora's vengeance carried the codes to trigger that self-destruction. Incoming communications from the surface, Hayes reported. Consortium High Command requesting immediate ceasefire negotiations. Elena felt a moment's pause as alien voices filled the command deck, speaking in translated panic about civilian populations and diplomatic immunity. The communications carried desperation that reminded her these enemies had families, cultures, billions of innocent lives who had never chosen war with humanity. Your Majesty? Hayes waited for orders, his finger poised over the weapon's control. Elena stared at the planet below, its blue-green surface beautiful beneath the defensive shields. 60 billion human lives balanced against hundreds of billions of alien civilians. Her mother's plan offered total victory at the cost of becoming everything humanity had once fought against. Mother, Lyra said quietly, her young voice carrying understanding beyond her years. Grandmother left one more message for this moment. The main display shifted to show Victoria's face, recorded in the Queen's final weeks when radiation sickness had already begun its work. Her mother looked directly at Elena across time, silver eyes burning with familiar determination. If you're seeing this recording, Elena, then the choice is before you. The consortium believes their homeworld is inviolate, that its destruction would violate every principle of civilized warfare. They're counting on human morality to stay your hand. Elena felt tears threatening as she watched her mother's final lesson unfold on the screen. But morality is a luxury that extinct species cannot afford. If you hesitate now, if you show mercy to those who would have shown none to us, then everything I sacrificed becomes meaningless. Our people die, and the universe counts us as another failed experiment in galactic civilization. Victoria's image leaned forward, her voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. You are the queen of humanity first, Elena. Everything else is secondary to our species' survival. The recording ended, leaving the command deck in silence, broken only by the sound of defensive fire against their shields. Elena felt the weight of the crown settle heavier on her shoulders as she faced the ultimate test of royal authority. Planetary core resonance, mapped and locked. Lyra reported with mechanical precision, ready to initiate cascade failure on your command. Elena looked down at her daughter's clone, seeing Victoria's ruthless pragmatism burning in those two familiar eyes. The child had been created for this moment, genetically modified to make the hard choices that would ensure humanity's survival. She was purpose-built for necessary evil. The Hidden Fleet? Elena asked. Encountering heavy resistance throughout consortium space, Hayes replied. But holding their positions. Admiral Torres reports 20% losses, but enemy formations are breaking under concentrated fire. Elena nodded, understanding that the diversionary battles were buying time for this critical strike. If Consortium Prime fell, the alien leadership would fragment and their military coordination would collapse. Victory was possible, but only through genocide. Signal Admiral Chen, Elena decided. Begin planetary bombardment. Target civilian population centers first. Hayes hesitated for a fraction of a second before his training reasserted control. Yes, Your Majesty. Bombardment commencing. The Aurora's vengeance spoke with the voice of impossible weapons, its quantum destabilizers reaching through defensive shields to strike at the planet's surface. Cities that had stood for millennia vanished in cascades of exotic energy, their populations eliminated too quickly for fear or pain. Elena watched the destruction with cold fury mixed with sick fascination. Each successful strike brought humanity closer to total victory, but at the cost of becoming the monsters their children would learn about in history classes. The moral weight was staggering. Planetary shields failing, Lyra reported with satisfaction. Core resonance building toward critical threshold. Estimated cascade failure in 12 minutes. On the communications channels, alien voices screamed desperate pleas for mercy, offering unconditional surrender and reparations beyond counting. Elena listened to their panic with growing numbness, understanding that showing mercy now would only delay humanity's extinction. Your Majesty, Hayes said quietly. We're receiving a personal transmission from the Consortium High Regent. He's requesting direct negotiation with the royal bloodline. Elena hesitated, then activated the communication link. An alien face appeared on the screen, its features marked by evolutionary adaptations to high gravity and low light. Despite the physiological differences, she could read desperation and dignity in its expression. Queen Elena, the High Regent spoke in heavily accented human standard. I speak for 300 billion souls who never voted for war with your species. We offer complete territorial withdrawal and permanent non-aggression treaties. Please, there must be another way. Elena stared at the enemy leader, seeing intelligence and genuine concern for his people's survival. For a moment, she wavered, remembering her mother's diplomatic training about the possibility of coexistence between species. Then she looked at the tactical displays showing human colonies still burning from the Harbinger assault, and her resolve crystallized into diamond hardness. There was another way, she said quietly. Your people chose differently when they built weapons to eliminate my species. Now you'll live with the consequences. Elena cut the transmission and nodded to Lyra. Initiate planetary core cascade. Her daughter's clone pressed the activation control without hesitation. Deep beneath Consortium Prime's surface, quantum resonance patterns destabilized the geological forces that held the planet together. Within minutes, the alien homeworld would tear itself apart from within. Core cascade initiated, Lyra confirmed. Planetary destruction in 8 minutes. Elena felt gravity settle around her like a mantle as she claimed the title history would give her. The queen who chose her species' survival over galactic morality. Around her, the Aurora's vengeance hummed with satisfaction. In 8 minutes, Consortium Prime would die and humanity would emerge as the dominant power in their region of space. The price was genocide on an unimaginable scale, but they would survive to pay it. Signal the hidden fleet, Elena commanded. Begin final phase operations. The death of Consortium Prime reverberated across the galaxy like a quantum shockwave, its destruction visible from neighboring star systems as the planet tore itself apart from geological instabilities. Elena watched the alien homeworld die on the main display, its surface fracturing along tectonic lines that released energies equivalent to stellar collapse. Planetary destruction complete, Hayes reported with professional detachment that barely masked his horror. 300 billion confirmed casualties. Consortium military command structure has effectively ceased to exist. Elena stood motionless as the tactical displays updated to show the war's transformation. Throughout alien space, Consortium fleets were fragmenting as news of their homeworld's destruction reached individual commanders. Some battle groups surrendered immediately, others fought with desperate fury. Most simply scattered to the galactic rim, abandoning their territorial claims in favor of survival. Admiral Torres reports complete tactical success across all fronts, Lyra announced from her station, her young voice carrying authority that belonged to someone decades older. Remaining Consortium forces are in full retreat. Estimated casualties, 47 billion military personnel, 200 billion civilians. Elena felt the numbers settle into her consciousness like lead weights. In 6 hours, humanity had eliminated an alien species that had dominated galactic politics for millennia. The victory was absolute, decisive, and utterly damning. Your Majesty, Hayes said quietly, we're receiving surrender communications from 12 separate consortium successor governments. They're offering full territorial cessions and war reparations. Elena studied the communications traffic flooding their channels as alien leaders competed to offer humanity their species' complete submission. The survivors understood that continued resistance meant extinction, so they prostrated themselves before their conquerors with desperate efficiency. Accept surrenders only from governments that can demonstrate actual territorial control, Elena decided. Ignore the rest. We don't have time to sort through every faction that claims authority. Around them, the Aurora's vengeance maintained its position above the ruined homeworld. Its impossible weapons trained on the debris field that had once been the center of alien civilization. The ship's quantum cores hummed with satisfaction. Victoria's spirit finally free to rest, knowing her species had achieved ultimate victory. Mother, Lyra said softly, looking up from her tactical displays. What happens now? Elena considered the question with growing weariness. Humanity had survived the extinction event, but at the cost of becoming everything they'd once opposed. The galaxy would remember them as the species that chose genocide over negotiation, expansion over coexistence. Now we build an empire, Elena replied with grim certainty. The consortium territories are ours by right of conquest. We'll establish human colonies on suitable worlds, integrate useful alien technologies, and ensure this never happens to us again. She gestured to the tactical displays showing vast reaches of space suddenly empty of organized resistance. Thousands of worlds rich in resources and strategic importance now waited for human settlement. The expansion opportunities were staggering. Imperial administration will require significant governmental restructuring, Hayes observed. The collective parliament was designed to govern 60 billion humans across a few hundred worlds. Integrating consortium territory means ruling over territory spanning half the galaxy. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settling onto her shoulders like a mountain. Victoria had prepared her for war, but not for the aftermath of total victory. The royal bloodline would need to evolve rapidly to meet the challenges of galactic dominance. Signal Admiral Chen, Elena decided. Begin establishing administrative garrisons on key consortium worlds. Priority goes to industrial centers and strategic choke points. We'll need military presence to maintain order during the transition period. Throughout the former enemy territory, human fleets moved to occupy critical infrastructure with ruthless efficiency. The hidden vessels that Victoria had prepared for war now served as the foundation for imperial expansion, their hybrid technology giving humanity crucial advantages in governing alien populations. Incoming priority communication from Earth, Hayes announced. Parliament is requesting immediate consultation about post-war reconstruction policies. Elena felt a bitter smile touch her lips. The politicians who had criticized her mother's military spending were now scrambling to claim credit for the victory that spending had made possible. They would demand explanations, accountability, democratic oversight of the conquest they'd never had the courage to authorize. Tell Parliament that wartime command authority remains in effect until all territorial integration is complete, she replied. They'll have their democracy back when our borders are secure. Lyra looked up from her displays with curiosity, brightening her enhanced features. How long will that take, Mother? Elena studied the tactical projections showing human expansion across former consortium space. Conservative estimates suggested decades of military occupation before civilian government could be safely restored. Realistically, the royal bloodline would need to maintain emergency powers for at least a generation.
Long enough, Elena said quietly.
Your grandmother saw further than any of us realized. She didn't just plan for humanity's survival. She planned for our transformation into something that could never be threatened again. On the main display, human colony ships were already departing from industrial centers throughout human space, carrying the first wave of settlers to worlds that had been alien strongholds merely hours before. The expansion was beginning with efficiency that suggested Victoria had planned for this moment as carefully as she'd prepared for the war itself. The clone generations will be crucial during the integration period, Lyra observed with maturity beyond her years. Modified genetics for enhanced administration capabilities accelerated development to match expansion timelines. Elena nodded, understanding that her daughter's clone represented the first of many genetic modifications the royal bloodline would require. The challenges of galactic governance would demand capabilities that natural human evolution could never provide quickly enough. Your grandmother saw that too, Elena realized. The clone project wasn't just about winning a war. It was about creating a royal line capable of ruling an empire. Around them, the Aurora's vengeance began its journey back to human space, its mission complete but its purpose evolving. The ship that had been built for war would now serve as the flagship of the first human galactic empire, its impossible weapons ensuring that Victoria's vision became permanent reality. Elena stood in the command throne that her mother had died to prepare, feeling the weight of the crown transform into something heavier and more terrible. She was no longer just the queen of the human collective. She was the founder of humanity's imperial age, the mother of an empire built on necessary genocide. Signal the fleet, she commanded. her voice carrying authority that would reshape galactic civilization. Set course for Earth. It's time to tell our people what they've become. As the Aurora's vengeance entered quantum space for the journey home, Elena Victoria Thorne felt her mother's legacy settle around her like a mantle of stars. Victoria's impossible plan had succeeded beyond its wildest projections, ensuring not just humanity's survival but their dominance over half the known galaxy. The price had been 300 billion alien lives and the moral certainty that had once defined human civilization. But in exchange, Victoria had purchased something invaluable: the guarantee that no force in the galaxy would ever again threaten humanity with extinction. Elena closed her eyes and felt the future expanding before them like an infinite ocean of stars, waiting for human hands to claim and human will to shape. Her daughter's clone sat beside her, already planning the administrative structures that would govern their new empire. They were no longer the species that had once fled alien conquest. They were the conquerors now, and the galaxy would learn to fear the name of humanity, just as humans had once feared the consortium. Victoria's ghost smiled in the quantum static between the stars, finally free to rest, knowing her bloodline would rule among the stars forever. The return to Earth carried weight that transcended simple homecoming. Elena stood on the Aurora's Vengeance's observation deck, watching humanity's birth world grow larger in the viewport as their quantum drive completed its final approach. The planet looked the same as when she'd departed. Blue oceans, white clouds, the familiar continental patterns that had shaped human civilization for millennia. But everything had changed in the hours since their departure. Incoming communications from Seoul Defense Command, Hayes reported from the bridge. They're requesting immediate conference with Parliament leadership and military high command. The news from Consortium Prime has reached Earth. Elena nodded without surprise. Quantum communications traveled faster than ships, carrying word of humanity's ultimate victory ahead of their physical return. By now, every human world knew that their species had transformed from potential victims to galactic conquerors in the span of a single day. What's the public reaction? Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Mixed, Hayes replied diplomatically. Celebrations in the colonies that were targeted by Harbinger vessels. Protests in the core worlds demanding accountability for civilian casualties. Parliament is calling for immediate hearings on war crimes and constitutional violations. Elena felt a bitter smile touch her lips. The politicians who had been content to let her make the hard choices were now positioning themselves to claim moral authority over the consequences. They wanted the benefits of victory without accepting responsibility for its cost. And the military response? Admiral Davidson reports full fleet support for continued emergency authority, Hayes said. The officer corps understands what would have happened if we'd hesitated. They're prepared to defend wartime command decisions against political interference. Elena absorbed this with growing understanding. Victoria's plan had anticipated even this moment, creating a military structure loyal to the royal bloodline rather than democratic oversight. The Hidden Fleet's officers were personally bound to the crown, their careers dependent on royal favor rather than political appointment. Your Majesty, Lyra said from her position at the tactical station, I've been analyzing parliamentary communications traffic. They're planning to demand your immediate abdication in favor of civilian government. Elena studied the intelligence her daughter's clone had gathered, recognizing the political maneuvering that had begun the moment news of their victory reached Earth. Democratic leaders were scrambling to distance themselves from genocide, while claiming credit for survival, positioning themselves as the moral alternative to royal authority. Let them try, Elena said quietly. They'll find that queens who can destroy planets are not easily deposed. The Aurora's Vengeance settled into orbital position above Earth's capital continent, its massive hull casting shadows over the cities below. The ship's presence was a reminder that democratic authority depended on royal consent, not the other way around. Victoria had built her daughter's structures that transcended constitutional limitations. Incoming transmission from Prime Minister Rodriguez, Hayes announced. She's demanding immediate audience to discuss transition protocols. Elena activated the communication link, allowing the civilian leader's face to appear on the main display. President Rodriguez looked exhausted, her features marked by stress and the weight of decisions she'd never wanted to make. Behind her, Elena could see other parliamentary leaders gathering for what was clearly intended as a confrontation. Your Majesty, Rodriguez began with carefully controlled formality. Parliament requires your immediate presence for emergency session regarding post-war governmental structure. The people demand accountability for actions taken without constitutional authorization. Elena studied the Prime Minister with growing amusement. The woman who had voted to cut military spending every year for the past decade was now demanding explanations for the violence that had saved their species. The irony was perfect. Prime Minister, Elena replied with royal authority that brooked no argument. You seem to be confused about the current governmental structure. Wartime command authority supersedes parliamentary oversight until all territorial integration is complete. The war is over, Rodriguez insisted. The consortium has surrendered. Emergency powers are no longer justified under any interpretation of our constitution. Elena felt Lyra's enhanced genetics processing tactical scenarios at inhuman speed, her daughter's clone analyzing political factors like military intelligence. The child's modified capabilities were already proving their worth in the complex calculations of imperial governance. The war against the consortium is over, Elena agreed. But the establishment of human imperial authority has just begun. Parliamentary oversight will be restored when our borders are secure and our new territories properly integrated. She gestured to tactical displays showing the vast reaches of former alien space now under human control. Do you honestly believe civilian government is equipped to administer territories spanning half the galaxy? To manage populations that include 17 different alien species? Rodriguez's expression shifted as she absorbed the implications of total victory. Parliament had been designed to govern a few hundred human worlds, not a galactic empire that included thousands of alien planets. The scale of administrative challenge was beyond anything democratic institutions could handle. Liaison officers from the Royal Administration will arrive within 24 hours to brief Parliament on territorial integration requirements, Elena continued. Your cooperation during the transition period will be noted and appreciated. She cut the communication before Rodriguez could respond, leaving the Prime Minister to contemplate the new reality of human governance. Democracy would survive, but only as a local administrative tool within the larger imperial structure that Victoria had made inevitable. Mother, Lyra said quietly, the Hidden Fleet commanders are requesting permission to begin permanent garrison assignments. Admiral Torres wants guidance on civilian population management in former consortium territories. Elena felt the weight of empire settling onto her shoulders like a familiar mantle. She was no longer governing a democratic collective, but ruling territories that span multiple star systems and included billions of alien subjects. The royal bloodline would need to evolve rapidly to meet these challenges. Grant Admiral Torres full authority over territorial administration, Elena decided. Establish military governorships on all occupied worlds until civilian infrastructure can be properly integrated. She turned to study Earth through the observation ports, seeing her birth world with new eyes. The planet that had been humanity's sole refuge for millennia was now the capital of a galactic empire, its blue sky sheltering the government that would shape the future of multiple species. Signal the construction yards, Elena continued. Begin immediate expansion of fleet infrastructure. We'll need 100 times our current naval capacity to maintain Imperial authority across such vast distances. Hayes nodded as he transmitted the orders that would transform human industry from civilian production to Imperial maintenance. Shipyards throughout human space would retool for the massive construction projects needed to support galactic governance. The clone generations will need acceleration protocols, Lyra observed with tactical precision. Current development timelines won't provide sufficient administrative personnel for territorial management within acceptable timeframes. Elena looked down at her daughter's clone, seeing Victoria's foresight reflected in those enhanced features. Her mother had understood that ruling an empire would require capabilities no natural human possessed, genetic modifications that could process information and make decisions at superhuman speeds. Begin planning for expanded clone production, Elena agreed. Focus on administrative and command variants optimized for Imperial governance. Around them, the Aurora's vengeance hummed with satisfaction as its quantum cores recognized the transformation taking place. Victoria's impossible ship had evolved from weapon of war to symbol of imperial authority, its presence above Earth announcing humanity's new status as galactic power. Elena Victoria Thorne, first Empress of the human galactic empire, stood at the threshold of her mother's ultimate achievement. Victoria's plan had succeeded beyond its wildest projections, ensuring not just survival but dominance that would last for millennia. The price had been democracy, morality, and the comfortable certainties that had once defined human civilization. But in exchange, Victoria had purchased immortality for her species among the stars. Below them, Earth continued its ancient rotation, unaware that it had just become the center of an empire built on necessary genocide and impossible love. Elena smiled with her mother's confidence and prepared to claim her inheritance among the infinite stars.